you can trip up pharmacists who are the math geeks of the team, is that different healthcare facilities report salicylates in different levels or different units. So some of them do it in milligrams per liter, and some of them do it in micrograms per milliliter. Well, those are actually the same numbers. They just differ. The numerator and the denominator are different by a factor of 1,000. So 5 milligrams per liter is the same as 5 micrograms per milliliter. So we don't worry about that. It's when they report them as milligrams per deciliter that things really get screwed up. So we get a call where a physician, PA, nurse practitioner will say, yeah, I've got a patient that has a salicylate overdose of 97, and I am getting ready to start dialysis. Is there anything I should know? And so my first question is, what's the patient look like? Is he or she breathing fast? Abdominal pain? Oh no, they're just there in the bay with want to go out and smoke a cigarette, talk, laughing and joking with family and friends. I haven't check the units, right? Because that level is actually 9.7. There's a factor of 10 difference. Because we always have our staff members, we train our staff members to ask right off the bat what's in this. So just be aware of that. So these are things that can be bad news. 1 or 2 doses can be a problem for a toddler. There's several papers that have come out over the years that basically are taking this task. What are the highly dangerous things for a kid? Because children, 2-year-old, is exploring their environment. First thing they do is look at it, get it in their hand. They're trying to get all their senses in on it. They put it in their mouth and swallow it all the time. So it's helpful to know what could one tablet, one capsule, one mouthful, or 1 teaspoonful be fatal in a pediatric patient. So the assumptions that are made in most of these papers are that they look at the literature, and the lowest documented amount that has actually killed a child, say 2 years old, they use that as kind of a cutoff. So 1 year to 3 years old is when they're exploring the environment. When my grandkids were that age, I had to kind of retrain myself, and I went through the house on my hands and knees. You'd be amazed what they can get into, what you can find. So if you're a first-time parent, do that. Just go around and look. You're going to find pills that were dropped 2 years ago. You find something that they can stick into an electrical outlet that's right next to it. Happens all the time. It's very easy. Things that are brightly colored or that look like something else. I'm a little bit worried with medical marijuana now legal in the state that edibles. A lot of the medical marijuana edibles are in, actually some of them are like cakes and tarts and that kind of stuff. Gummy bears. Yeah. When the Department of Health got a lot of pushback, if you remember, they were going to put pharmacists in every dispensary and no smokable marijuana. The pro-medical marijuana people just went absolutely nuts. The entire population of the state went nuts. And so the Board of Health, in my opinion, kind of folded like a cheap suit. They took off all the regulations. So it's kind of like the Wild West right now. But, do adults overdose on and get sick from medical marijuana? Not really. A toddler can really develop severe central nervous system depression, almost a psychotic type state, and a fair amount of them go into a coma if they are challenged to 12 months of those gummy bears. Willing to taste just about anything, and just on their own, studies observing hand-to-mouth behavior 10 times now. Talked about that. So things to think about. Tricyclic antidepressants, probably not going to learn a whole lot about those. Originally used for as antidepressants. They kind of fell out of favor because they're highly toxic. If a person is depressed and you're giving them something, it can cause seizures and dysrhythmias and death. probably not the best thing, but it's, in the last probably 15 years, they've gained somewhat of a resurgence for treating a neuropathic pain. However, we've got new drugs for neuropathic pain, so they may be on their way out. Kind of hope that they are. Calcium channel blockers are bad news. Those kill people. The beta blockers, kinda. You can usually support a patient through on a beta blocker, but they're still potentially life-threatening. And the anti-diabetic medications, the sulfonylureas, glyburide, glipizide. You've got a patient coming in with a blood glucose of 10. That's bad news. So these are some of the additional ones that I'd like for you to know about. You don't see these all the time. Quinidine, it's an antidysrhythmic. Probably not going to see that a whole lot. Opioids. I mentioned opioids. I think now are 6th highest in the death rate in the country in Oklahoma. But it doesn't take much. Tragic story that I heard, and we were somewhat involved in after the fact, is a child who's visiting his grandparents here in Oklahoma from California. And the child was complaining of a severe headache. The kid was, I think, 7 or 8. His parents had flown him out here on his own. So it was just grandma, grandpa, and the kid. Well, grandma knows that grandpa has this medication for his severe cancer pain. And so she gives him oxycontin. And the child laid down on the sofa and died. 1 tablet. So it doesn't take a whole lot. Clonidine, a question mark on that. We treat a lot of patients, younger patients with ADHD with clonidine. Kind of tamps down the nervous system, the sympathetic outflow. But even in small doses, it can look very much like an opioid overdose. So the things that are classic hallmarks of an opioid overdose are very tight pupils, small, constricted pupils, decreased respiratory rate, decreased heart rate, and hypotension. Clonidine overdose looks exactly like that. And, a child gets a 0.2 and 0.3 milligram clonidine. There's the potential there to see fatality. We'll move up to the next one, methyl salicylate. Does anybody know another name for that? Oil of wintergreen. With the essential oils being very popular, a lot of people will have small amounts, these small 15 ml bottles, 30 ml bottles of oil of wintergreen, 100% around the house. Just from its name, methyl salicylate, there's going to be a potential for a salicylic acid and aspirin type overdose. When you do the calculations, it's much stronger than aspirin. When I say much stronger, much stronger. 1 teaspoonful of 100% oil of wintergreen is the equivalent of 21 regular strength aspirin tablets. And a child can very easily swallow. It burns, it's very irritating, but the child kind of takes that little bottle and tips it up, and they get that burning sensation. What are they going to do? They're going to, and it's going to go down, and they can very easily get a teaspoonful down. And then you're dealing with a rapid onset salicylate overdose, because that doesn't have to dissolve. It's penetrating the gut, going into the bloodstream immediately. So we're really kind of worried about those and discourage having oil of wintergreen in the house. Methanol, as little of a teaspoonful of that is called spinous in patients. One of the presentations of methanol, in addition to the ocular effects, they call it snowfield vision, where the person just looks like they're looking deep, in a really severe blizzard, because their vision starts to white out, is metabolic acidosis. And it's an elevated anion gap metabolic acidosis. If you see that in your patient, it is never good news. So if you've got an acidotic patient, calculate that anion gap. You could be dealing with aspirin. You could be dealing with methanol, which kills the eyes and the kidneys. We're dealing with antifreeze, which is very colorful and tastes sweet. Kills the kidneys as well. It's another one of the toxic alcohol. You could be dealing with an iron overdose, which is, until there were some packaging changes in the 90s, was the #1 killer of children. Especially the one, you've seen iron tablets maybe that have a candy coating on them because iron tastes horrible. They've got a sugar coating on them. A lot of times they're green or red. They look like M&Ms to a 2-year-old. So the kid's kind of sucking on them and then swallows them and very rapidly becomes toxic on iron. Working the night shift when this was shortly after I started at the prison center. Iron was one of the first things my mentor taught me, and got a call from a small rural hospital, and the physician said, "Yeah, I'm just reporting this iron overdose case. We're not worried about it. We're getting ready to send him home." I said, "What? Wait, what? We're sending him home? Do you have an iron level? Is the patient symptomatic?" Yeah, with a stomach upset." That's bad news in iron overdose. Precursor for real problems. And he kept saying over and over, I'll never forget it, you can't overdose on iron because it's a vitamin, and you can't overdose on vitamins. Where did he learn that?
It wasn't ABE or K.
So this was back when fax machines had like a heat-sensitive paper. You bought the paper in big rolls, and they'd come off. And when the fax was over, you cut it, and then you put it in the chart, and it probably would fade. And 3 months later, it just looked like there was one paper in the chart. But I just, after arguing with them, I said, okay, fine, I give up, and I started just copying book chapters, left and right, all toxicology textbook, they had all the papers, and I just loaded up the fax machine. I probably went through 2 rolls of fax paper on their ads. So, the best I could do. Pesticides. The type of pesticides that we worry about are mainly the agricultural pesticides. Think about them as being mini nerve agents. So carbamate and organophosphorus pesticides act just like serum and tabum and VX, the stuff that you may have heard of, Novichok agent, that the Russians have killed a few people with in Great Britain. The only difference is the speed with which they kill the person and the amount of time that you have to treat them before that chemical becomes irreversibly bound to acetylcholinesterase in the body and wipes out the ability to break down acetylcholine. The whole body essentially gets sterilized. So pesticides we worry about. One you might not think about, gun blowing, selenious acid. It's not going to impact a lot of people, but it just comes in a small bottle. Just put a little dab. Say you got a worn spot. The person does some amateur gunsmithing. Kind of blacken that up a little bit so that the firearm looks nice again. Very dangerous. And imidazole decongestants. Does anybody know what those are? You may have some in your purse, ladies or guys, in backpacks. What's that?
Is it a cocktail?
No.
Is it Sudafed?
Sudafed? Yeah, I live on Sudafed this time of year. No, that's Afrin. Afrin and Visine. It's hard for a parent to believe that their kid comes around sucking on a bottle of Visine. And it's always the products that either decreases the swelling in the nasal tissues, so the Afrin with the oxymetazoline in there, or the Visine or other eye drops or eye drops that are meant to get the red out. They act just like clonidine, exactly like clonidine, and so they have very rapid onset of respiratory depression and death. It doesn't take a whole lot of that. Now the stuff that you use, if it's saline, to just keep the nasal passages moist or to keep the eyes moist, artificial tears, doesn't do it. It's stuff that's actually medicated because it says so on the bottle. Some things I'd like to add. E-juice, we haven't, it hasn't gotten nearly as bad as I thought that it was going to. And part of that is because when the nicotine juice started coming out, they were making stupid strengths of them. I mean, incredibly strong nicotine. It smells good. I mean, it's flavored. So look at the attractive packaging of that. But they didn't come in child-resistant containers before. That's, I notice I said child-resistant. It's determined. There's nothing that's child-resistant. Nothing. Fort Knox, forget about it. Determined 2-year-old can get into anything. They are like little cavemen and cavewomen. They're starting to learn to use tools. That brain is starting to develop.
They watch you open it once and they've got it. I turned around one day and my daughter was feeding that her and I was like, how did you get that open? And just watched me do it like the week before.
Right. And if they don't have the strength or the dexterity to get it, they go all Terminator on it. One thing, there was, the best one I ever heard is a little guy that got into a bottle of antihistamines, and he couldn't push down and turn that bottle, so he opens a kitchen drawer and kind of gets it in there, and just wedges it in, leans into it, and then he pushes and turns.
Oh, wow.
That kid's, that's like a Buddy Einstein. So we call it child resistant, and every few years, Channel 4, 5, 9, 25, they're all equal opportunity offenders, do a thing where, you know, they'll put some M&Ms in a medication bottle and give them to the kids and time them. So you have, I mean, usually 15 seconds at the most for the first kid. Some kids are lagging behind, but I can't help but think. I said, don't do that. We're actually teaching those kids in that age
Why
group.
would you do that? Now you're telling them that all these bottles are
Same
candy.
reason.
All of the recipes are online for you to cook up meth and everything else.
No, it's something that's very, you know, they're trying to teach people kids can get into stuff. But that focus group that they use, they're teaching those kids that candy isn't that. So when we did a video of Dangerous Around the House, we didn't do that with my granddaughter. She was just, you know, starting to crawl. I just put a medication bottle on the table in the living room and just turned her loose in the hallway. And I mean, they put like rails in the house so that like the tracking shot, so it comes up and around. It's actually pretty cool. But she doesn't know that bottle is there. She comes toddling in, right into the frame, comes around the sofa, grabs onto the table, grabs it, and starts shaking it. So, they'll find it. It's like magnets. Medications are like magnets for little kids. Well, we all know about the unit dose laundry packs. And I call them that because if I say pods, then they get in trouble because it's a registered trademark. One of my colleagues was doing a presentation at a national meeting, and when he submitted the abstract, he made the mistake of putting pods in the title. Guess who was there? The Tide people. To stand up and say, I'd like to point out to everybody, this was not our product. Okay, you got it. But they cause burns. They can cause burns. When we see burns on the skin, and I'm talking about full thickness burns, the few cases where that's occurred is because mom or dad doesn't change clothing. It stays in contact with the skin for a while. It's obviously any kind of detergent is likely to cause upset stomach and vomiting, but there are rare cases, and there's no rhyme or reason why it happens, that kids will stop breathing after they bite into these things. And I used to think that it was, you know, okay, something irritating, bad tasting, it's going down the throat, you have a laryngeal spasm, the airway closes off, and the kid becomes anoxic and just falls over, right? Until I was talking to a mom, and I heard the kid vomiting in the back, crying, mommy, 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 and then all of a sudden, it's like, he just, boom, fell over. So the ambulance got there, he was fine. Usually, you know, an hour or two on the ventilator. Why it happens, we don't know. Obviously, something with the central nervous system is going on. That's the mechanism has not been fully elucidated, right? Fentanyl patches, and I'll go a little bit further to say pretty much all the opioids. Once a fentanyl patch comes off the patient, after 3 days on that patient, there is an incredible amount of fentanyl still in there. So if Grandpa takes it off, just kind of puts it on the liner to the trash can, kid's going to want to do what Grandpa does, right? Grandpa puts that on his skin. And in an opioid naive patient, fentanyl patches are a good way to kill them. You have to work your way up at very, very small doses, or the patient has to have a significant amount of tolerance for opioids. They're also abused, and what the patients will do is put them inside the cheek, which putting something inside my cheek has been on another patient for 3 days. It just skeeves me out. But people will do what they want to do to get their opioids. And why would they do it on the cheek? There's passageway, yeah. So anything that's administered rectally, across the lungs, buccal absorption, sublingual absorption, it hits them fast and hard, and the liver doesn't even crack at it the first time around, so they get their effects really quickly. I can't tell you the number of medical examiner reports I've read where a patient has been found dead with one tucked inside their cheek, or they try and enhance the absorption by kind of breaking it loose a little bit, so they just chew on it a little bit, and they're found the next morning or 2 days later. Yeah.
Professor Roark just had a call from her sister during lunch that they had a patient in the ER today that she has been on fentanyl for a while, but she decided to make a tea out of it this morning, and when she put it in the microwave to heat it up, and that made it more active or hyperactive, and she was in the ER from the overdose. She put it in water and then heated it up.
The patch?
To make a tea, a herbal tea out of it.
Every time I think I've heard everything. That one's a new one out there. So what are you going to give those patients? Get them breathing again. Reversal film. I carry some in my car because I don't want to be known as the guy that doesn't have it. Yeah, exactly. You can get it. You can go to the Department of Mental Health, Substance Abuse Services. They have clinics all over the city, all over the state. You can just go in and ask for it. And it's not what I thought it was going to be when I went in. I went in kind of looking, I took some students and said, dress down. Look, kind of run down when you come in tomorrow. And went in and said, you want some of that antidote? It was very non-threatening, non-judgmental. Everything was in the third person. Do you know somebody who has an opioid problem? Yes. She got it, one of them out, showed us how to use it, and had us fill out a quick form, do you know anybody that wants some help, and send us on our way. So we all can carry it around. The buprenorphine and naloxone is, we've seen a decrease in that when Suboxone tablets were available. First I thought, okay, how much are we going to refer a child into the emergency department for? Well, it's going to be a quarter of a tablet, and it kept getting smaller and smaller until we had a case where a kid just had it in the mouth just briefly. Mom retrieved it, the logo's readable, the whole 9 yards, and the kid breathing started slowing down, and he fell asleep. And at that point I said, buprenorphine is scary, scary drug. So every child goes in. They don't seem to be as interested in the films now that's available being used to maintain people off of opioids. So why would they put a combination of buprenorphine and naloxone together? One's an antidote for the other, right? How did they do that? Got it out. It's so the patient doesn't dissolve it and inject it into their arm, into their bloodstream. The naloxone is not effective orally. But as soon as you've got somebody that tries to bang it home, it doesn't work. They can't get a home for it. Because they're administering the wrong antidote at the same time. Hydrocarbons. I mentioned about aspiration. We've had multiple children in the state die over the years from drinking either tiki torch fuel, which until there's some changes in the packaging, looked exactly like apple juice. It wasn't child resistant. You've got kind of a orangey yellow fluid in a bottle that's the same shape and size. The girl doesn't know the difference, so they started selling it back. And a lot of them smell good. Lamp oils this time of year are going to be a problem. And it just takes an incredibly small amount to get down into the lungs to start causing a really severe pneumonitis to develop. And it may take up to 24 hours to start manifesting. So any kind of coughing or choking is going to be suspect after a child ingests lamp oil, gasoline, lighter fluid, that kind of stuff. Put promethazine gel on there. It's still it's compounded by a lot of pharmacies. It's remarkably effective if a patient doesn't want a suppository, promethazine suppository, can't take a tablet because they're vomiting so much. Just take a little bit of this, put it on the wrists, very rapidly absorbed across the wrist into the bloodstream. Great way to get it in. The problem is, since it's a compounded product, there is no standardization whatsoever. And a lot of times it's dispensed just like this with nothing on the syringe. So you don't know if it's one dose that's in that syringe. You don't know if it's 50 doses that's in that syringe, and they just have to put a tiny amount each time. You don't know if they made it incredibly concentrated or low concentration. I've looked into mandating test or labeling of those individual syringes, and the Board of Pharmacy says not. As long as they put it all in a Ziploc bag and that label's on the outside, they're good. But how many people keep that
Very few
bag around?
pharmacies will compound it now. It's really hard to find.
Oh, is it?
I know of a few.
But it works good though.
Yes, it does.
We talked about this case, the soliciting overdose. I didn't recall where I put that in there, so I'm going to move on. Or look at your patient. So that guy does not have a salicylate level of 97, right? He's 9.7. So let your patient be the guide. Listen to that little voice. Any thoughts on this? If you intubate your patient, or could you have a problem? It's a drug that we've already talked about. Acts kind of like opioids, looks like an opioid overdose. Clonidine. So you got a clonidine overdose. The patient's respiratory drive goes down, their heart rate goes down, and you intubate them and you trigger a vagal response. What happens then? Their heart rate goes down to 4. And, in a clonidine overdose, the best way to keep them breathing and keep them awake is just every so often, kind of pinch them a little bit, give them a little bit of a tongue on a sternal rub, something, just wake them up. The brain starts remembering to breathe again. So it might require somebody being on top of it and kind of waking them every so often. You're going to have a patient one-to-one with a nursing or nurse's aide or something like that, or maybe you in an emergency department. That's all it takes for the clonidine patient. It's going down the intubation pathway. It's a wrong thing to do with a clonidine overdose. And occasionally, you get the question, well, if it looks like a clonidine, or if it looks like an opioid overdose, why don't we use naloxone? And there's some studies early on that said naloxone worked for it. You know what? They were probably just messing with the injection site, got a little bit of pain, that's enough to wake the patient up and start breathing again. There's no biochemical, pharmacologic reason why naloxone should work in a clonidine overdose. No, but naloxone is not going to hurt a patient.
So
But
give it
don't rely on
anyways
it.
if you're not sure which one, but then pay attention to the patient.
There you go, exactly. Let the patient guide your decision making. The laboratory, but more important, vital signs things. One of the, I call it kind of an ugly secret of toxicology is supportive care. Well, most overdoses is about all that's needed. It's the trick, and the very difficult part is knowing when a life-threatening thing is going to happen, what are precursors to those life-threatening symptoms, and if they occur, what do we do? That's where we can help you guys out. We can help you separate the wheat from the chaff. Don't over-treat a patient. Don't throw the entire book at them as far as that. I'm not a big fan of, we had an andazole patient, which is an antidote for methylene glycol, that received it when she shouldn't have, and that was an expensive mistake. We're not going to talk about that. Over-treating a patient, you're just going to run up a bill. And I am not a huge fan of urine drug screens because, I mean, who cares if the patient is positive for THC? That could be from 6 weeks ago. If they're on meth, they're going to be, and they're symptomatic from it, they're going to be tachycardic, and they're going to have an elevated blood pressure. And if we treat those, we're treating a meth overdose. Sometimes they will allow you, they'll lull you into a false sense of security. Urine drug screens. But I've got everything covered because a urine drug screen is an immunoassay, and it's just for maybe 7, 8 panels. It tells different kinds of drugs that a person's exposed to. Example is benzones, benzodiazepines. Urine drug screen doesn't catch all of the benzodiazepines. Xanax typically doesn't show up. A lot of them actually don't show up on the urine drug screen. It's going to catch Valium and some of the very prototypical ones. And opioids, if you're positive for an opioid, that means you probably have something that was metabolized to morphine at some point in the body, because that's what that antibody is looking for. But it's not going to catch fentanyl. It's not going to catch hydrocodone, the very common ones, or the synthetics or the semi-synthetics. So you just let the patient's symptoms guide you. This case, or this portion on the toxic alcohols I'm kind of blowing through is because we've addressed a lot of that already. I'll talk briefly about the antidote for toxic alcohols. The two that we most frequently see are methanol, which is around the house, and windshield washer fluid, and maybe in the back of the car, and the antifreeze. What hurts a person in an overdose to these, or exposure to these, is not the parent compound, it's what it's broken down into. So the toxic metabolites end up killing the kidneys. So what do we do with it? We block the enzyme that breaks down these toxic alcohols. It's called alcohol dehydrogenase. And so if we block that enzyme, the body will find other pathways to kind of get rid of it, and that's the portion of the toxic alcohol that's metabolized to the toxic substance. It's not enough to really overwhelm the kidneys often. The kidneys can handle a small amount of after that's metabolized. So by blocking that enzyme, what we did for many years is get a patient drunk, because that enzyme likes ethanol a whole lot better than methanol. And you keep them drunk for 2 or 3 days, and the methanol and the ethylene glycol will take care of themselves. You just kind of taper them down off of that, and patients would deliberately inhale carbureted cleaning fluid. They drink carbureted cleaning fluid. They go get a jug of Prestone and start chugging that, knowing that they come in the emergency department, they'd be admitted for 3 days, they get clean sheets, they're going to stay warm, they get 3 meals a day. They can stay drunk the entire time too, because we're either infusing pharmaceutical grade ethanol into them, or we're giving them a tequila sunrise every 4 hours. It's actually fairly attractive for people to do. Caused a lot of problems. a drug comes along, antizol, which does exactly the same thing as in blocking that enzyme, but it doesn't get a person drunk. So the admissions, like, for the people just looking for 3 hots and a cop, completely disappear. So very effective at treating a patient with toxic alcohol overdose. Huge advance in treatment, because you don't have a patient now that's belligerent, mean drunks. Last thing you want is somebody up on the floor that's got an ethanol level of 100 and is want to fight the male nurse or the female nurse. I've got one of my buddies is a nurse, and he says his specialty is in emergency department. It's always the male nurse. So the drunk guy comes in, he wants to fight me. So, I think I'm not sure what else I have on there. I know it's probably time for me to go. We've got Dr. Latassi coming in. I'm not going to step on her toes. So you guys can get a break. So, any questions?